Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we dive into one of the most dramatic turning points of our time. Ukraine has shocked the world. Russia is bleeding on the battlefield, and the cracks inside the Kremlin are widening faster than anyone expected. Many people are asking the same question: has Ukraine broken Russia for good? And will Moscow even survive what's coming next? Stay with me because the story you are about to hear is not only about war, it's about a nation's survival, a dictator's gamble, and the unstoppable power of resilience. From the very first days of the invasion, Russia believed this war would last just a few weeks. They thought Ukrainian defenses would crumble, that the government in Kyiv would flee, and that the world would simply watch in silence. But instead, something extraordinary happened. Ukraine stood up. The people chose to fight for every inch of their land. Farmers, teachers, doctors, engineers, men and women who never held a gun before all became defenders of their homeland. That spirit lit a fire the Kremlin never imagined, and it is that fire that has now pushed Russia to the edge. Ukraine has not only defended its territory, it has launched counterstrikes that stunned the Russian military. Towns once draped in Russian flags are now free again. Villages that lived under occupation have seen Ukrainian soldiers marching back with their blue and yellow banners, greeted with tears and flowers. Each liberation is more than a military victory. It is a message to the world that Russia's so-called unstoppable army is not invincible. And this message is what has broken the myth of Russian dominance. The Russian army has taken losses at a scale unseen in modern warfare. Thousands of soldiers have been killed, wounded, or captured. Entire units have been wiped out. Advanced tanks and armored vehicles that once looked intimidating now lie burned and abandoned in fields. Military analysts admit that Russia has lost more equipment in Ukraine than they can replace in years. The backbone of their war machine is cracking, and every new Ukrainian strike widens the fracture. What's even more humiliating for Moscow is how often their own mistakes have led to disaster. Poor planning, corrupt supply chains, outdated strategies, and weak morale among troops have turned the battlefield into a nightmare for Russian commanders. Many conscripts didn't even know why they were fighting. Families in Russia receive coffins back home while officials in the Kremlin whisper lies about victories. This disconnection between propaganda and reality is one of the reasons Russia's system is collapsing from within. Ukraine, on the other hand, has shown the world what true unity looks like. With Western support, with modern weapons, and with the courage of ordinary citizens, they've built a defense so strong that Russia has failed to achieve its main objectives even after years of fighting. Every drone strike, every ambush, every clever counterattack chips away at Russia's strength, and behind those attacks is an unbreakable spirit, a belief that their future is worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Now we see a shift that even Putin's closest advisors cannot ignore. Russian generals are being replaced, arrested, or disappearing mysteriously. There are reports of mutinies, soldiers refusing orders, and cracks in the chain of command. The Wagner rebellion earlier shook the entire Russian system, showing the world that the Kremlin is not in full control of its own forces. That was a preview of what could come if Russia continues bleeding manpower and credibility. The sanctions and economic collapse add more fuel to this fire. Factories shut down, imports vanish, revenue shrink, and millions of Russians feel the pressure every single day. No matter how much propaganda Moscow spreads on TV, people cannot escape empty shelves, job losses, and the painful truth that their lives are getting worse. A war that was supposed to bring glory to Russia is instead dragging it into poverty and isolation. Meanwhile, Ukraine is not only surviving but gaining strength. They have built alliances stronger than ever before. NATO nations are supplying them with advanced systems like HIMARS, Patriot missiles, and modern tanks. Each delivery sharpens Ukraine's edge. And unlike Russia, Ukraine is fighting with purpose, with unity, and with global sympathy on their side. The world sees them as the defenders, the fighters against tyranny, and this image fuels more support day by day. Russia is caught in a trap of its own making. If they retreat, it's humiliation. If they advance, it's disaster. Every new offensive costs them thousands of men and endless resources. While Ukraine grows more experienced, more battle-hardened, and more determined, the truth is simple: Russia cannot win this war. Every scenario points to the same outcome. They are breaking under the weight of their own aggression.
And this is why the phrase "Ukraine broke Russia" is not an exaggeration. The war has revealed the fragility of Moscow's system, the weakness of its military, and the falsehood of its propaganda. The world has seen that the so-called second most powerful army in the world can be stopped, outsmarted, and beaten by a nation that refuses to surrender. This realization alone is history-shaping. But the story doesn't end here. What's coming next could be even more devastating for Russia. The longer the war drags on, the more their economy shrinks, the more their population suffers, and the more their allies distance themselves. Already, cracks are showing in Moscow's partnerships. Even countries that once stayed neutral are questioning their ties to a regime that looks weaker every month. Without allies, without money, and without soldiers willing to die in vain, Russia faces a future it cannot control. Imagine what will happen when Ukraine launches its next major offensive. Imagine the shockwaves across the Kremlin when another occupied city falls, when another Russian unit surrenders, when another border region burns with resistance. Each victory for Ukraine is a psychological defeat for Moscow, and psychology in war is as powerful as any weapon. Russia's people will begin to question, the elites will begin to whisper, and the walls around Putin will close in tighter. The fear inside Russia is already visible. Censorship has tightened, arrests of dissenters increase daily, and paranoia spreads in every direction. A government that fears its own people is a government on the edge. And history shows us that once cracks appear in authoritarian systems, collapse often comes faster than anyone predicts. Ukraine's resilience is not just military, it is cultural and moral. Their songs, their art, their language, their humor, even in the darkest hours, all of this has been a weapon against despair. When a people refuse to break, they cannot be defeated. Russia has underestimated this power from day one, and now it is too late to turn back. The world is watching history unfold in real time. We are seeing a giant brought to its knees by a nation it thought was small. We are seeing courage triumph over cruelty, and strategy triumph over brute force. Every headline, every battlefield report, every defiant speech from Kiev echoes the same truth. Russia is broken, and what is coming will push it further toward collapse. So when we say Ukraine broke Russia, it's not just about battles won or land reclaimed. It's about shattering an illusion. The illusion that dictators are untouchable. The illusion that military power can crush freedom. The illusion that lies can outlast truth. Ukraine has proven otherwise.
And as the months ahead unfold, the pressure on Russia will grow heavier, sanctions will bite deeper, casualties will rise higher, international support for Ukraine will expand stronger, and inside Russia, the whispers of doubt will grow louder until they become a roar. The Kremlin may try to silence it, but silence cannot stop reality. The future that awaits Russia is not one of victory but of survival. Survival against economic ruin, survival against political rebellion, survival against the judgment of history. Ukraine has rewritten the script of this war, and Russia has lost a pen. This is why they will not survive what's coming, because what's coming is not just more missiles or more offensives. It is the unstoppable momentum of a people who refuse to surrender, backed by a world that refuses to look away. Once that momentum takes full shape, no wall, no propaganda, and no iron fist can stop it. And when the dust settles, when the final battles are over, the world will remember not how Russia invaded, but how Ukraine endured, how they broke the invader, and how they inspired millions across the globe to believe once again in the power of courage. Ukraine has broken Russia, and Russia cannot survive what comes next.